All right, welcome back. In case you just joined us, you're in time for Developing Stories. It gives us an opportunity to feel your pulse on some of the top headlines on how they affect. I'll start today with this one. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has conferred the National Award of Grand Commander, the Order of the Niger, GCON, on Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi. President Tinubu announced the award during the Nigeria-India bilateral meeting at the State House, Abuja, on Sunday. He said that the award was bestowed on the Indian leader to signify the country's appreciation and commitment to the Nigerian-Indian partnership. In his words, you stood side by side with Nigeria on many fronts for many decades. Yes, democracy is a court of essential yield. You've navigated through Indian sectors and also ensured joint collaboration to maintain and strengthen our relationship.
All right, let's move on to the next, if we will. That takes us to the 2024 Ondo election results. Now, meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has advised the candidates defeated in the 2024 Ondo State governorship election to seek legal redress if dissatisfied with the outcome of the poll. Earlier, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, declared Lucky Aiyedatiwa, the candidate for the All Progressives Congress, APC, the winner of the election held across 3,933 polling units in the state's 18 local government areas. Aiyedatiwa is the incumbent governor of the state, and according to INEC, he won in all of the 18 local government areas of the state. The election was marred by irregularities, including vote buying and violence in some parts of the state, despite the presence of security officers. On Saturday, operatives of the State Security Service, SSS, arrested a suspected vote buyer during the election at Ward 4, polling unit 007, outside St. Stephen's Primary School in Akure, the state capital. The unidentified suspect was arrested with 2 bags of money, apparently meant for the inducement of voters. Right.
Well, go to court. And that's the new slogan now after every election, sadly. Go to court. Well, that's not all on Developing Stories. Center for Transparency Advocacy, CTA, has released preliminary reports on the Ondo State off-cycle governorship election, which took place Saturday, November the 16th, 2024, focusing on the performance of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and the roles of the electorates in the poll. In its report by the center's executive director, Faith Mwadishi, CTA said the results of its election observation demonstrated the need for the Electoral Commission to enhance its polling operations, especially in logistics, deployment, and other associated activities. Let's take a listen. All right, we'll get it to you much later, but there's one more story, is there?
Yes, there is. Still in Developing Stories. In the meantime, the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, has called for the dismissal of the chairman of INEC, Mahmood Yakubu, and officials of the commission at all levels as part of a reform of the electoral process in Nigeria. Obasanjo made the call in a paper he presented at the Chinua Achebe Leadership Forum, Yale University in the United States. The annual lecture honors the late Nigerian writer, Chinua Achebe. He delivered the address titled Leadership Failure and State Capture in Nigeria in a pre-recorded speech played at the event. In his speech, Obasanjo described the 2023 general election as a travesty, adding that the reform of the electoral system is a key agenda for the country. The former president also called for shorter tenures for INEC officials and the more rigorous vetting process to prevent the appointment of partisan individuals. All right.
Bonvita. Prepare them to win every day.
This is LN 24/7. All right, we are back and just in time to give you a rundown of what's on Developing Stories. We started with this story, and it says President Tinubu confers GCON title on Indian PM Modi. Zoe?
Yes, and the second developing story we looked at, 2024 Ondo State election results go to court. Tinubu tells
Go
PDP
to
and
court.
others.
You know, sour oranges there for losers. And it's the third one. It says Center for Transparency Advocacy decries vote buying irregularities. That's a reoccurring problem, isn't it, Nigeria?
It is. And in addition to that, Obasanjo calls for sack of INEC chairman and leaders at federal, state, and local government areas, local government levels.
Yeah, retired General Olusegun Obasanjo, GCON, continues to be a very relevant and figure in Nigerian politics. Despite, being, away from power, he still remains a very, very important speaker in Nigerian politics. And you can't take his words lightly, can you? He has come out to speak vehemently. He has spoken outrightly, against what is happening in Nigerian politics in the runnings of the nation. Do you think he has, the right to speak? Especially some say he had his turn, he had his opportunity. What did he do? Well, Nigeria, it's your opportunity to share your thoughts. Let's feel your pulse on how these stories, impact you, or what you think about what we have read to you, just now. What do you think about these stories? What do they provoke in your thoughts? We'd love to hear from you. We'll be joined by our Abuja studios, where I believe Ayobami will be standing by to share his thoughts as well. We'll look forward to that opportunity when he comes on very soon. But here we have for you what's on our Developing Stories. Quite an interesting one. Yeah, we saw the visit of Indian Prime Minister to Nigeria, and that's been a significant one for the Tinubu administration, considering the fact that no Indian PM has come to Nigeria in the last 17 years. So it makes a huge statement for the Tinubu administration. Is it one of the Jagaban's master strokes we are seeing, and how will it impact Nigeria? A lot of people are speaking and speculating, on the backdrop of that visit, or is it overhyped? Well, I really hope that it will impact on Nigeria's economy, the deals that have been struck between India. India is a very critical partner to Nigeria, a very important partner. We have over about 60,000 naturalized Indians, or Indians living in Nigeria. In fact, to show you how much Indians are integrated into Nigeria. My brother's godfather is Indian. Oh. And his name, he doesn't have a traditional name. He was given an Indian name, Nari. So it just goes way back, to Nigeria's industrialization. Indians were there. The first indigenous company to be listed on the stock exchange, the Nigerian Stock Exchange, was run by an by Indians. So that's how much history we share with India.
Totally. Of course, it's something that does happen, amongst presidents. And when it comes to strategic relations between countries, it's always a good one. Like you said, he's the first Indian Prime Minister in 17 years. The previous one was Manmohan Singh, and that was at the time that he came. So now he is here, and it was a good one. It was part of a 3-nation diplomatic visit, and we do believe that a lot came out of it. Like you said, what the benefits that nations get from each other, from one nation to another, one president to another, as long as they're mutually beneficial, they're always good for the country. So we believe that it was a good one. We believe that in coming times we will be able to see what came out of it,
the fruits
of that visit.
We hope we see it very soon. Nigerians can't wait for the positives to come out. But one thing I think we can glean from the Indians and the runnings, the way they run things. We can also learn, the presidential media team can learn from the Indians, how they have been able to follow, they have been able to, real time give information on their PM's, visit to Nigeria with videos, sound bites on social media, back to back. In comparison to, what happens in Nigeria when President Tinubu goes elsewhere to other countries. A lot of Nigerians are in the dark on what, our president is doing. We don't know where he is or what he's doing. So I think there's a lot to learn in the area of information. Information is key. As a public servant, Nigerians need to know at every time where their president is and what he's doing. So thumbs up to the Indian media team there for keeping, viewers, keeping the populace up to date on the Prime Minister's visits, especially to the Indians here in diaspora. You did address them. Okay, let's go to a story that we cannot avoid. We cannot afford not to talk about the story of the Ondo elections. And Ondo elections took place on Saturday. And we've seen the results so far. And the same issues coming up. The issues, we saw videos of hoodlums. We saw ballot snatching. We saw, political thugs sporadically firing, bullets into the air and dispersing, electorates. And it just, begs the question, why and how are we going to overcome these issues, this challenge of conducting elections, free and fair elections? Is it too much for Nigerians to ask that we should have elections just like the one that took place in the United States? Probably as well. I'm sure India has a lot to offer, being the largest democracy on the planet. They can also help us, in that area. How has India been able to do it successively? Peaceful, credible elections. These are things that we should imbibe if we are to deepen democracy and transparency. And these are ethos of any true democracy. So, it was sad to hear those stories. So
quite sad. While we were talking, I asked myself, does it mean that we're becoming so numb to irregularities, especially when it comes to the electoral process? This is something that has been talked about for such a long time. And even though some might be celebrating right now, the ruling party might be celebrating, it does really question where we're going as a country as far as the electoral process is concerned. And the Ondo State election is again, a representation of the many things that are wrong with our electoral process, right? When you have impunity, for all of the elections that I can remember that I've been a part of and that I've had the opportunity to follow, you would always hear vote buying. You would always hear about violence. There would always be ballot snatching, and that's it. Let's move on. How do we move on from that? When do we get to correct these abnormalities? It's an indictment on the Election Management Commission, INEC. It's an indictment on the security apparatus. How would you be there and you would have stories of these things happening? It's not acceptable.
Well,
it's sad.
I watched I watched on social media video where guns were fired by hoodlums, and the police on duty took to her heels. So you can indict away Zoe, really, because we see these things live. Okay, we see them live on television. We see them live, on different platforms. The question is, how do we check this impunity? Have we made any progress in terms of our election processes? Have we made any progress so far? Can we say that from the last dispensation to this one, there has been some progress made from the conduct of elections so far? I really find it hard to say, yes, there have. So, as you said, is this where are we institutionalizing this anomaly? Has it come to stay? Has it come to roost finally? Are we going to leave it this way? Are we going to descend more into chaos when it comes to conduct of elections? And at the end of the day, when the outcomes result in conflicts and disagreements, the winner can tell, the aggrieved, go to court. And the courts there was a time when the fear of the courts was the beginning of wisdom. But it seems the response of the politicians to resolving matters in the hallowed chamber and the courts have are pregnant with questions.
Maybe they know something that we don't.
We don't know, because politicians should be wary, of the courts, because justice is blind. It is not partisan. It is apolitical. So I'm wondering. There's this new development, this new slogan, "Go to court." What it means in true sense of it. Yes. Well, Nigeria, the line's open to you. You can call us. Yes, let's hear what you think. Love to hear your thoughts. But meanwhile, let's go to our studios in Abuja. I believe Ayobami is the man this time around. Hello, Ayobami. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Good to see you. And of course, Zoe, good morning. It's a beautiful day in Abuja here.
Yes,
yeah, Ayobami, the discussion in politics will not be complete without your commentaries. And I know you you relish these issues, discussing them, because you actually have a very, interesting perspective to these things.
Anyway, funnily, a better way and, of course, a proper way to jump into the conversation, talking about the Ondo election, where we have the incumbent governor, Lucky Orimidson Ayedatiwa, becoming, the new elected governor of that particular state. Don't forget that there's been a lot of interest in that particular region, talking from the political perspective, from the stakeholders, the security structure of that particular election. You're correct. If you will ask those questions with the deployment of police officers in this particular exercise, we saw a lot of vote buying. Now, some people even called it a vote, commercialization. It's become the norm in these elections that we see in Nigeria these days. You recall Edo State, so many votes, buying, vote selling, vote trading, as the case may be. And on those states, not far from it at all. Vote buying in all the 18 states. In fact, some footages that I saw, I don't know if you saw it, Henry and Zoe, some footages that I saw in, some other stations. A journalist was asking a elderly woman, how was the exercise? And she said, oh yeah, we went out to vote in Yoruba. We went out to vote and we queued, and of course we collected our money after voting. So it became a norm. In fact, when she was talking, so those people around her were cautioning her, don't say that. They didn't ask you to talk about this. So, you know, it is really some thing of concern when we look at, you know, issues of election in Nigeria. You made emphasis, you talked about, you know, the United States, the elections that, you know, just passed on. And we have to learn a lot of lessons, you know, looking at other developed nations. I'm so happy that, you know, even the Prime Minister of India, Modi, called the President Oremi. Can the Oremi now come to be President Bola Tinubu, learn from, you know, the political structure that India is known for? India is vast, is big when it comes to political structure. Can we really learn from that? So it's really a big, you know, thing of concern for many stakeholders. Many, you know, election observers, they've raised a lot of concerns. In fact, as we speak right now, Henry and Zoe, I must tell you, many people don't even believe in election observers again, because the indications you push out, the statistics you push out, are not, they don't even tally with what INEC is, you know, bringing out. And for INEC again, another perspective to that angle. Former President Obasanjo called for the removal and restructuring. This is not the first time we're talking about this. Who will appoint the very, you know, the one that will be non-biased, the one that will be non-partisan, that will give us a free, credible, and, of course, the elections that Nigerians are looking for. So a lot of concerns, a lot of questions for this Ondo election.
You know, Ayobami, I find it hard to refute your claims. You would expect that in a non-election cycle that it should be easier to conduct elections. But what we've seen is a total anomaly. What we've seen is a show of shame. And we've never had it this bad. I should want to believe that President Tinubu would want to leave a legacy for himself. And in that area, I would have expected that coming from the kind of election that he won, that left a lot of people, you know, with diverse reactions as to the validity. He should have hit the ground running on electoral reforms to ensure that the next elections coming up will be one that Nigerians will have no reason to doubt, you know, the outcome. There's no gainsaying that right now electoral system has not been effective. We've not been able to get it right. And to that effect, the right leaders will continue to elude us if we do not, you know, get it right, you know, with the elections. I mean, there's so much to talk about. You know, I would love to pose a lot of questions to our analysts who will be joining us later. How a state with over 5 million people had less than 10% of, you know, of the citizens, of the residents voting, say 500,000 people, you know, and you can imagine the amount of security personnel that were deployed for that election, about over 35,000 policemen. And one would be wondering, are we in Afghanistan or is it a war zone? You know, it's pathetic, you know, and how would, as personally looking at it from my, as a winner, how would I feel? Do I really feel that I won an election, you know, after all that had happened? Are we going to, should we institutionalize the anomalies of saying, okay, whoever can rig the most, okay, let's put it that way. Whoever can rig better should win the election. And so everybody, instead of, you know, playing to the gallery about this, let's actually institutionalize it and say, okay, let's legalize election rigging and say, okay, whoever can rig better. Because what we're doing now is not an election.
Yeah. Interesting indeed, and I'm happy that, you know, you mentioned many things about this, you know, election, and of course, whoever can rig better will win the election. You recall in Edo State, in fact, after the election, after INEC announced the winner, of course, we have a new governor in Edo State now. Many political parties were criticized, were accused of buying votes, and the ruling party also came out to say, well, I think the best buyer won the election. Now, talking about Governor Lucky Aiyedatiwa, well, after the demise of Ogbeni Rotimi Akeredolu, he became the governor according to the Constitution. Now he is the elected governor of that particular state. In an interview that I watched, he talked about, breaking records. At the past election, with as a running mate with Governor Rotimi Akeredolu, they won 15 local governments. Now, he won all the 18 local governments of the state. Now, you mentioned, the percentage of people that vote. Apathy. That is, it's been part of the conversation since when we realize that elections or political scenario in this Nigeria is really not becoming more interesting to citizens. So it is a thing of concern. And you also mentioned a go to court scenario. I think it's beyond the slogan "go to court." When we were seeing the 2023 elections, everybody go to court, go to court. Now, it is going towards the direction that the judiciaries are the one, or the judiciary system are the one giving us those that are ruling us. And it's also a thing of concern. You recall that former President Goodluck Jonathan talked about this, that judiciary should not be the one to give us, to elect our leaders for us. After rigging, after buying votes, after the whole, issues on field, you now go to court. Then the three-man panel, four-man panel will now pronounce the person that will rule the state or the nation for the next 4 years. Imagine a state like Ondo State, a population of 5 million people. Just less than 500 people came out to vote. Is that the reality? Is that the reality or the reflection of the citizens in that state? A big concern, Zoe, I know you want to talk about that.
I mean, just look at Nigeria, for instance. The win of dear President Bola Tinubu in the elections in 2023. I mean, a country of over 200 million people and winning by, 6 million thereabouts. It leaves a lot to be desired. And these are anomalies that really we need to look into. We shouldn't take it as a norm. We should not be content with what is happening. And it behoves on all stakeholders to hold government accountable. I mean, how are we engaging government? How are we interrogating these issues? Are we just going to gloss over it and wait for the next elections to come? And then we begin to start, crying wolf once again. And this is the time for us to, look at these issues and say, government, you have work to do. We need to strengthen our institutions because right now it seems our institutions are very weak. Zoe.
Yeah, well, earlier I was kind of, agreeing, so expressing some displeasure when Ayobami was talking about the fact that it does appear that it is now the judiciary that seems to be legalizing the electoral process, or like giving us endorsing a president or whoever is going to be leading the country. That in itself shouldn't be, so it's really disheartening. It's disheartening. There's so many issues. I remember there was a story in the news, Ayobami, I don't know if you would recall, a while ago, like a week or 2 weeks ago, where I think it was Serap, they were suing the INEC chairman, asking him there were some vote buyers or so. Some people were meant to be prosecuted and they didn't really follow up on that. So Serap was suing INEC, the INEC chairman specifically, to say, look, there has already been a court ruling to say that you must prosecute whoever was found violating this process, either through vote buying, ballot snatching, in any way. And that itself speaks of impunity. So that's why I said earlier that it's an indictment on the Election Management Commission, INEC, and the INEC chairman, because what you're telling us is that since elections started under your leadership, there has been no major reform that we can point to say this is what has happened to ease or to make the process more effective. All the additions that we have seen, they now come with their own drama, still making reference to the 2023 elections with all the electronic transmission of results, yes,
Beavers, yeah.
to the to the server and all of that. We saw all the drama that happened. So, what can you say is the major reform that you've carried out to make sure that we do not have issues of vote buying, issues of ballot snatching, issues of violence? Can they say as the management body for elections that they have done well? Can they really say that?
And you know,
It's
sadly,
sad.
Ayobami, what I find is that it's not the people's scorecard that is actually relied upon when it comes to those who lead our agencies, their performance when it comes to qualifying or grading their performance, how they've delivered. And it's not the people's opinion that matters, because I doubt if every Nigerian, most Nigerians would have allowed, the present INEC chairman to continue after what happened in 2023. But we find out that it's government that gives the thumbs up, and that it ends there. I think that needs to change. We need to change the way that our public officers, are appointed, and how they are assessed. What is their deliverables? What is the mandates given to them? And these are the questions we must ask. It was the way the election performed in 2023, was that the mandate of the INEC chairman? Because if it wasn't, he shouldn't be allowed to continue.
So who is going to sack him now? Is that the person that benefited from?
That's what I'm saying. Because if he didn't do well, then he would be retained. Or he would not be retained, rather.
It's funny, and of course, you're correct. Well said, no doubt about that. In a well-developed nation, and a nation that wants, progress to be established, and of course, people to experience the dividends of democracy, proper democracy, we should see things like this happen. But in Africa, especially Nigeria, it's become a norm. It's become a part of our political, structure. And what are the mechanisms? Where are the mechanisms? How do you justify who performs, who calls the shot? The man wants to retain him to also enjoy the benefits. A minister in our nation wants to dash, our judiciary vehicles, property, so that he can call the shots. He would dictate. Who plays the pipe part that dictates the tone. So everybody wants to just have somebody that you can call and say, yeah, I've given you a benefit of doubt. I'm putting you in this position. I'm putting you in this position. So you must also benefit. If we really want politics to be politics, and we want a level playing ground for everybody, I recall, the body language of former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan in 2015. You will recall that, he made sure that no issue whatsoever called, there was proper transparency in the election, in that particular election. Many people voted for, many people voted against him. And eventually, you will recall on the national TV, Jega and Orubebe, if you remember that scenario that happened. We will not accept this, pronouncement and many other things like that. But it shows the beauty of democracy. Even incumbent president, lost an election. But ever since, we've not seen such scenario. No. During President Muhammadu Buhari, there are a lot of electoral reforms that were requested for. There are a lot of bills that were passed that, okay, Mr. President, please sign this. He did not until the last minute he was leaving office. Now, the new president is on board. Will he also sign so many other things? Will he also endorse many other things that will affect the process that brought him into power? My answer might be no. And many other people will also agree with me that, well, definitely he will not do that. Maybe after he leaves, maybe after he feels that I'm not going to benefit anything again, they might see some reforms in the electoral process, maybe.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot more to unpack on this issue, Ayobami, and definitely we will as we move into another phase on the program on what's on the front burner. The Ondo elections is definitely something that we will be delving more into. So just hold your horses. We'll take a quick break right now. When we return, we definitely will be having our analysts join us to share their thoughts on what happened on the 16th, I believe,
yes,
of November 2024 in Ondo State. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
In the vibrant nation of Nigeria, the government has implemented a remarkable innovation, the pedestrian bridge. Prior to this development, navigating the busy city streets was a perilous endeavor as pedestrians risked their lives daily in pursuit of a better future. However, the safety and convenience of these pedestrian bridges are often compromised by a troubling issue: the lack of reliable electricity on the bridges, especially during the night. This creates a dangerous situation as many pedestrians find it daunting and life-threatening to use the bridges after dark. Join us as we delve into the pressing challenges and risks posed by the absence of power supply on Nigeria's critical pedestrian infrastructure, shedding light on the urgent need for a solution to this pressing problem. As daylight fades, Nigeria's pedestrian bridges descend into darkness. This lack of proper lighting poses a significant threat to the safety and well-being of those seeking a safe passage across busy roads. Some of the pedestrian bridges at night become hideouts for hoodlums.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing happening to Lagos. As you can see, this is one pedestrian bridge, this is another one there. And these people are passing through, but my concern about this pedestrian bridge is that maybe at night they should put on these lights. Yes, because the one at, what is it called, 7 o'clock, they do rub there.
Pedestrian bridge is good. It prevents accident on the road. But the one we are here in Ojota at night is somehow risky because it's not light. So it's actually dark at night.
A pedestrian is actually being abused by users. Hardly do they keep it like to the right. And then again, there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of illumination. Very, very important. And in the night. And the government can still go further to include probably a CCTV, all right, to checkmate insecurity or hoodlums who are parade and harass some workers.
This is one of the pedestrian bridges in Lagos, Nigeria, that has power supply. But unfortunately, there's this other one right beside me that does not have power supply. There has also been reports that hoodlums have vandalized some of the light bulbs on the bridges.
While there was initial power supply and light bulbs that beautifully illuminated this bridge as at when it was built, there has been no replacement or repair since it has been damaged. The absence of power supply on these bridges not only increases the risk of accidents, but also worsens the fear and reluctance of citizens to embrace these vital structures.
They rub every night, day and night, not night, day and night. That's what they do here. Yeah, they should provide security. Maybe all these, neighborhood, maybe they should just put 2, 3 at night. They should just be securing this bridge for us.
The tout, you always sleep here at night. So for you that want to cross over or pass through the bridge, you actually feel scared at times. Except we see 1 or 2, 3 that you can just walk together, but it's just only one person. Taking this bridge at night is so risky.
Imagine a different reality where Nigeria's pedestrian bridges are beacons of safety, adorned with vibrant lights that guide citizens towards secure crossings. Without adequate lighting, pedestrian bridges become breeding grounds for crime and accidents, deterring citizens from utilizing these essential structures designed for their safety.
On the issue of crossing the highway, not using pedestrian by negotiations, the state government really frowned at this, and it has become impressive for government to make arrests of those who cross pedestrian highways using the bridges. And each of the signposts has the inscription: crossing the highway is a punishable offense, 50,000 naira fine, which the state prescribe. But after they make arrest, they'll be taken to magistrate court another day here. At times, the highest they pay is 25,000 naira for those who did not harass or molest our car officers on duty. We really frown at obstruction of our officers on duty. Once you are arrested, make peace with them, get to a session, you'll be taken to court. We always tell them, once you are arrested, you are just an ordinary offender. You are not a criminal, you are not a suspect. Only court of law can prescribe you guilty. In the last 90 days, the agency has taken it upon itself to arrest miscreants on these bridges, because each time they made arrest, people always lay claims that miscreants always disturb them while climbing the bridges, and those who are selling market on the bridges. Now, we've cleared virtually 85% bridges in the state. Ikorodu Road, Yanole Epo, Oshodi Oke, Ladipo, Bolade, Palm Grove, Onipan, Fadeyi. You can't sell miscreants on the bridges again. We've made substantial arrest of miscreants on the bridges. So the bridges are good to go for pedestrians. The state government intends to employ more hands for us, which can make us to do shifting work. Now, our officers resume 8 o'clock and close by 7 p.m. And after 7 p.m., no car officer will be on the road, or by these pedestrian bridges, or by express, where they direct you not to cross. But those who are arrested mainly are those who said, no, it's my life. Then if you see, at the time they arrest, they say, it's my life. If I die, it doesn't concern you. And the state government is for safety of lives and properties. So we don't want dead body on our highways. That's why we employ them to always still use pedestrian bridges. The state government is putting finishing touches to the synergy between RRS, task force for parading. But in daylight, between 8 and 7 p.m., you see car officers, at least 2, attached to each bridges on the highway. But at night, no. For now, no. The state government is working on the clock to make sure the state is governable. The bridges are good to go for pedestrians. So all what has been destroyed there will be replaced as soon as possible by the state government.
Yet amidst these shadows, there shines a beacon of hope, a call to action for citizens to reclaim their right to safe passage and demand accountability from authorities. Nigeria's pedestrian bridges are carefully designed structures created to offer citizens safe passage across busy roads, elevated above the dangers below. It is through collective effort and advocacy that the true potential of pedestrian bridges can be realized, illuminating pathways to progress and prosperity for generations to come. It is time for change. The dangers of not having power supply on Nigeria's pedestrian bridges are vast, but the benefits of embracing and utilizing these structures are even greater. Let's come together to shine a light on the importance of safe crossings, creating pathways to a brighter and safer future for all.
Ellen 24/7 is first of all a news station.
Well, we continue with updates from the just concluded governorship
in the southeast has raised questions if INEC will be able to conduct elections.
With a core team of over 40 correspondents spread across Nigeria.
Nigeria is set to take its place.
And affiliates in Africa, Europe, America, and Asia. We give you news as it breaks from the perspective you can trust.
Ellen 24/7 News. Where the story goes, we go.
Ellen 24/7 lights up your day with unbeatable shows that guarantees absolute access to stories that revolves around politics, entertainment, and sports. Breaking news, plus detailed reports and analysis. At Ellen 24/7, where the story goes, we go.
All right, it's great to have you back. You're still watching This Morning, your morning cappuccino, morning tea, or morning coffee. And so far, I hope you've been quite, it's been quite an interesting experience for you. We're moving on to another segment of the program where we want to take an in-depth look at what happened on the 16th of November in the Ondo State gubernatorial elections. Looking at how to resolve the challenges to free, fair elections in Nigeria, which continues to be the bane of politics. Well, our talking points, well, let's take a look at that. And our talking points today revolve around analyzing the electoral process, challenges to free and fair elections, and mitigating the challenges. We must find a way to mitigate the challenges, or else our discussions will not have achieved anything. Look forward to having our guests, which I'll be introducing as they come in. But these are the issues we'll be delving on this part of the program. I know we gave you a tidbit of the Ondo elections in developing stories. Now, to take an in-depth look at what happened, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, declared Lucky Ayedatiwa of the All Progressives Congress, APC, as the winner of the Ondo State governorship election held on Saturday. Ayedatiwa defeated his closest rival, Agbola Ajayi of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, securing 366,781 votes to Ajayi's 117,845. The APC clinched victory in all 18 local government areas of the state. Okay, record-breaking, right? Well, after a collation of the results from the 18 local governments, results from the 2024 Ondo State local government elections show a decisive victory for the All Progressives Congress, APC, with a total of votes I've mentioned earlier, 366,781. And let's look at the figures now from each local government area. I'd like to pass that up to, okay, before that, the APC, we mentioned the APC's results, we mentioned the PDP, the ZLP. Yeah, ZLP got only 2,692 votes. Wow, a far cry from what they needed. I'd like to bring Ayobami in. He should be, he's good at, pronouncing some of the names, of the states, of the local governments that results. Ayobami, thanks for coming to the rescue here. We have some names that, I don't want to be called out for not pronouncing correctly. We know we have Okitipupa and all of that. And I'd like you to read out some of the results, to our viewers. Let's see how it all went down.
Okay, so for SLDO, that's the first one there. SLDO, APC had 14,115 votes, while PDP had 7,814 votes in that particular local government. And Iraje, APC had 24,474 votes, while PDP, far from it, 3,632 votes. Odigbo, I beg your pardon, Odigbo, 9 for APC. It was, the record says it all, 26,683 votes, while PDP, 9,348 votes. Akure North. For Akure North now, we have APC securing 14,451 votes, while PDP secured 5,787 votes. Okitipupa APC 26,811 votes. PDP 10,233 votes from those 5 local governments. We have 18 local governments. I know many other are coming in now. Akoko Northeast APC 25,657 votes. PDP 5,072 votes. Akure South APC 32,969 votes, and PDP 17,926 votes. Oshe APC 16,555 votes, and PDP 4,472 votes. Akoko Northwest. We had Northeast West now. APC 25,010 votes. PDP 5,502 votes. Akoko South APC 12,140 and the PDP 2,692 votes. And that's 10 out of 18 local governments. For Ondo West, APC 20,755 votes. PDP 6,387 votes. Owo APC 31,914 votes, while PDP 4,740 votes. Akoko Southwest, APC 29,700 votes, PDP 5,517 votes, and Irele APC 17,117 votes, while PDP 6,601 votes. Ifedore APC 14,157 votes, while PDP 5,897 votes. While reading all this, I'm just trying to remember when all these INEC officials pronounce and announce all these votes. It's a great work. Ondo East APC 8,163 votes, while PDP 2,843 votes, and Ile Oluji Oke Igbo APC 16,600 votes, and the PDP 4,442 votes, and Idore APC 9,114 votes, while PDP 8,940 votes. Over to you, Henry and Zoe.
All right, thank you, Ayobami there. You just had a taste at being an INEC electoral officer, reading all that out. Well done, well done. Definitely a clean sweep for the APC there. And one would wonder why all the, if the people spoke so resoundingly, why did we need all the drama, all the ballot box snatching? Why did we need all that drama going down if, majority of the populace were all for one party? But aside from that, let's take a cue from the election report by YAGA, election monitoring group, YAGA Africa, on Sunday, condemned the incidences of vote buying that characterized Saturday's governorship election in Ondo State. Mwagu and Mbalu said YAGA Africa calls on political parties to refrain from the culture of commercialization of elections, so you talked about earlier in Nigeria, and instead invest in practices that enhance trust in the electoral process. Now, the election monitoring group also charged INEC to take deliberate steps to protect the secrecy of the ballot and enforce its electoral guidelines, especially those related to secrecy of the ballot. Additionally, YAGA Africa recommended that the Commission ensure that the BVAS is consistently updated and upgraded to ensure optimal functionality. YAGA Africa also stated that the election offenders arrested during the Ondo election, something Zoe also mentioned, should be handed over to the police for due prosecution. They said security agencies should be more proactive in arresting and prosecuting perpetrators of electoral malpractice, adding that the process erodes equality in electoral competition and undermines the legitimacy of the electoral victory. The question asked, does it really undermine the legitimacy of the electoral victory? Because most of our politicians don't think so, else I think they would have looked for a lasting solution to this anomaly. Zoe?
It does appear that because it does favor a certain group, it's okay to condone it. And I do recall on Friday there was a news report. It was an NGO of some sorts. They had like a seminar where they tried to address the issue of vote buying, and one of the conveners there talked about the fact that one of the reasons this has persisted is because it is being condoned. Almost at all elections, there are stories of vote buying. There are people that can be seen either giving money or giving some sort of inducement to would-be voters. And the question is, why is it being condoned? Why has no one been apprehended and punished on account of that? That's the reason why it persists. It's been condoned. There's no consequence for that action, and so it will continue.
Casting our minds back to the 2023 elections, what happened to those culpable for throwing away voters' cards in bushes, in gutters? INEC investigation should have been concluded by now. What is the report on those who perpetrated that act, denying people from exercising their constitutional rights? And these are the questions that remain. Ayobami, you want to share your thoughts?
Very, very correct. Nigerians are worried about that. Personally, I think I also have a little issue with the Electoral Act of 2010. When you look at Section 1, the Section 124 is 124, subsection 10A and B, which addresses, this particular issue, votes buying issue. Now, the penalty there is if, when convicted, you will pay a fine of 500,000 naira or an imprisonment period of 12 months, that is a year, or both. And you just want to wonder, what is 500,000 naira when, are being, accused or being convicted, being pronounced as an offender, electoral offender? How much is 500,000 naira? I can equally pay 500,000 naira. If I can buy votes, I can pay 500,000 naira easily. So I feel, part of the struggle, or part of the fight, we should also look at these penalties effectively. How do we up it up in a way that every other person that wants to, exercise or go through that path will be scared of the wrath of the law? Henry, and of course, Zoe, you will agree with me. For politicians, 500,000 naira is nothing compared to when you say, okay, I'll buy votes. How much is it? They have bags, according to EFCC arresting, even with our report, they have bags that, of money using to buy votes during that period. So if you're going to arrest me, 500,000 naira, 12 months, is nothing. So we should look deep into that. And for the struggle, Yaga should also, really emphasize, and probably all the, CSOs should also look into it. If they're going to sue the INEC, if they're going to sue federal government, they should sue, and let's say the last part of this process. It is very important.
All right. Fortunately, we have a guest joining us right now, Paul James, election observer for Yaga Africa. Mr. James, thank you for joining us on this morning.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, so we just read the report from your organization, Yaga, saying that the election in Ondo State were characterized by vote buying and election irregularities. What can you say to this, and how does it impact on the outcome of the elections?
Well, again, Nigerian election, different context, different dynamics with election. You're right. While we thought we had a very election this time, especially on the part of election administration, early polls, and also even in the management of electoral technology, if you look at the results upload, 8% completed, and also even in the development of the beavers, based on our report,
Great to have you back, and apologies for that break in transmission. We're still looking at the Ondo elections, that happened on the 16th of November. That's over the weekend on Saturday. Also analyzing in our talking points the electoral process. We also look at challenges to free and fair elections and how to mitigate these challenges. We are joined by our guests, Paul, let me recall his name here again, Paul James Yaga, Representatives Election Monitoring Organization representative, and he was sharing his thoughts about the outcome and the process, the electoral process during the Ondo elections. So I hope he's still with us to continue. We also will be having another guest join us, Femi Lawson. Femi Lawson will be joining us to share his thoughts. He was in Ondo and still is in Ondo State to give us some insights and his perspective on the outcome of the Ondo elections. Well, so much has been said. Well, before we go any further, let's take a sound bite. And before we do take that sound bite, let me read the intro to that sound bite. Quite interesting one coming from an election monitoring. Do you have that intro, Zoe?
The Center for Transparency Advocacy decries widespread vote buying. So they've released a preliminary report on the Ondo State off-cycle governorship election, which took place Saturday, November 16, 2024, focusing on the performance of the Independent National Electoral Commission, as well as the roles of the electorates in the poll. Now, in its report, signed by the Center's Executive Director, Faith Nwadishi, CTA said that the results of this election observation demonstrated the need for the Electoral Commission to enhance its polling operations, especially in logistics deployment and other associated activities. That's the report on Center for Transparency Advocacy decrying widespread vote buying. Let's see this.
Prior to this election, we had engaged the different stakeholders and issued that statement based on what we saw concerning the preparedness of INEC for this election. On our part, as CTA, we deployed 70 observers for this particular election, at least 3 per local government area, and then we had a team. The team you are seeing here is the election expert team that were deployed to different local government areas to roam. The other election observers we had were positioned at special polling units across the 18 local government areas to give us real-time reports. As at yesterday, we actually went around the racks to see how prepared INEC was, and this morning, as early as 6:30, we were out to observe the movement of materials from the rack centers to the PUs. We're happy to note that early this morning, we saw that there was already deployment from the different PUs from the different rack centers to the polling units. As early as 7:45, some polling units were already set up in Akure South and North and some of the other places that we visited. We can also say that in the different local government areas and polling units where we deployed observers, we can say that about 90% of that by 8:30 they have started polling. That means voting has started at 8:30, about 90%. Then the others started around 9:30, just 1 hour after. On logistics, CTA notes early deployment of materials. Our field observers reports indicate the voting in many polling units commenced at 8:30 a.m. We see this as an improvement over the just conducted Edo election. Even though there were still some challenges, we hope that INEC will learn from this election and continue on this trajectory, as logistics have been a major challenge in our elections. So we commend them for overcoming some of those challenges, but we also saw that in some areas, for instance, in Akure South, from RAC 006, our observers report inadequate vehicles for transporting election materials, forcing adult staff to resort to the use of motorcycles to transport staff and materials. This in addition to other logistical materials that were not adequately provided for or not provided for, including tables, chairs, and tents in voting areas situated under open places. The presence and performance of security agents prior to this election, yesterday we raised concern about the different figures that were branded by the police. Initially, we had 22,000. After there was 35,000. Yesterday morning, there was over 36,000. So we were really concerned about that, and we decided that that was going to be one of the things we were going to look at. Across the different polling units that we went, we saw at least four security agents, not entirely police, because the police had said they were going to have at least 4 police officers in each of the polling units. So some of the polling units we went to, you can see 1 police officer, 1 custom officer, immigration or road safety. But in actual fact, there were 4. There was only very few places we went to. We saw 2, but after a few hours, 2 others came to join. So we saw that the police did not deploy 4 police officers, but there were at least 4 security officers in each polling unit that we went to.
All right, Center for Transparency Advocacy decrying widespread vote buying and election irregularities there during the Ondo elections. We have our guests back. We have a Yaga representative, Paul James, an election observer as well. We also have joining us Femi Lawson, National Secretary for Center for Democracy. A campaign for democracy, rather. Femi, thank you for joining us. And once more, I want to thank Paul James for staying with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, great to have you both. And Paul, you were trying to make a summation of what happened in Ondo State. I'd like you to reiterate those words. What does these issues, what do it amount to? What are the implications of what transpired on the 16th? Can you hear me, Paul?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, please go ahead.
If there is something that is concerning from this attitude of the political party is the fact that I think they are becoming lazy in their engagement and also encouraging political corruption. What we saw in the build-up to the election for us, for instance, was that political engagement didn't start early, and it was not to the level that was expected. If you look, you'll see that most of the parties started their political campaigns around the middle of October, which was barely a month to the election. So for us, we thought we started seeing the signs that they may have other ideas or other plans for engaging the elections. And of course, just like predicted, we saw also in the build-up that we saw signs of this vote buying in the build where they were distributing fertilizers. They were distributing between 2,000 to 5,000 during the political rallies, and even the level of engagement with citizens, instead of focusing on issues, it was more about rhetoric and engaging in attacks of personalities. So we thought for us that was hugely concerning. And going into the election, the morning of the election, the signs that we start seeing almost in every location, for me, raises that worrying concern. Why are we saying that we can't invest in planning for election for over 12 months and then politicians will come in the weekend of the election and make a mockery of the process? So again, what is also important going forward is, I think, making example of some of these bad elements. Some arrests were made by the DSS, which is commendable. You expect also those persons to name whoever are their sponsors, and the sponsors should be picked, should be apprehended, and be prosecuted. I think we should not just be quick to be moving away from elections without reflecting in retrospect to see to assess performance of the different stakeholders and also hold people to account. The point that we have raised, we cannot have security agencies to be mentioning they deploy thousands of security operatives for election without proper accountability. If these actions are happening at the polling unit, I mean, we also need to start holding the security agencies to account. What sort of arrest was done and what sort of prosecution followed those arrests? I think that is also very important.
Right, thank you, Paul.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like to ask Femi Lawson. Thank you so much once again for joining us. So first off, what was your personal experience, being in Ondo State? What were your observations as regards the process and as regards how fair and credible, or maybe not so much, it was from your view?
Well, thank you. Personally, my first observation will be in the area of performance of INEC in that election. After the September governorship election in Edo State, INEC promised to improve on its performance towards the Ondo governorship election, and I think what we saw on Saturday was an improvement on what we saw in September in Edo State, and it is commendable that INEC is beginning to the opinion of stakeholders within the electoral chain. In the area of deployment of personnel and logistics on Saturday, INEC did well, even though you cannot have an absolutely correct situation where there will be no issues as few as they may be. So the personnel also conducted themselves very, very well, that to the extent that INEC did not have its personnel involved in any of these controversies that are usually surrounding our election. Another important thing to note is the performance of the EREV, the election result portal, where INEC was able to upload not less than 9% of the entire result from across the state, real time, at the close of that Saturday. Also is the fact that the security agents were professional above what we've always seen as their role during elections, where sometimes they practically become tools in the hand of politicians. So these commendations have to go to these people, but for stakeholders, particularly the politicians, we have not really gotten to that point where they are doing their expected obligations as much as they should. I want to specifically mention that when you look at the aspect of voters' education, which is primarily supposed to be the duty of the political parties, we are still very much lacking behind. And that is why you can see the level of turnout in that election. We have fewer people who voted on Saturday than we had in 2020 and 2016, some 8 days ago. Right? One would have expected that we have more people coming out to participate in this election in a state where there are about 2 million registered voters, but you have less than 800,000, less than 700,000 determined.
Hello, Femi. Can you hear me? If I may come in there, you seem largely satisfied with the outcome of the election. So what do you make of the Yaga report? It said it was marred by vote buying and irregularities.
Well, I don't know what Yaga described as irregularities, but of course, election, particularly in the recent times, have become like a trade for politicians. But unfortunately, they've devised means cleverly enough that you could, maybe except in very few circumstances, like the man who was, arrested having bags of cash in his car. Politicians have devised means cleverly enough to the extent that you can hardly find it easy to actually hold anybody, by their hands for engaging in vote buying. Just like he said, like Peter said, now you see politicians giving out, items that are not necessarily cash to woo voters prior to the election, even some on the day of the election. So the culture of vote buying is practically becoming part of our elections. But, it cannot be held responsible for this. or can the security agent, because even in some cases that these voters are already induced before coming to the polling station. So unlike in the past, where we saw people holding money and openly canvassing for vote, in previous elections, now you could hardly find that. So it is merely speculative, if we want to say it this time around, that people are buying vote, unlike the past where people practically brought cash openly to the polling stations, canvassing for vote and exchanging it for money. So politicians, are devising means of engaging in this practice without honestly, openly demonstrating it.
All right, Femi, let me allow my colleague in Abuja, Ayobami, it's your turn.
Well, thank you so much, Henry. And, Femi, as you were talking, I was just wondering, when you say it has become a norm that vote buying. But since we have James here, Paul James, Yaga said that they all exercised, they witnessed a lot of commercialization of elections, of vote buying and many other things, which is an offense in the Electoral Act. Can you really spell out? It seems as if Femi don't know what you mean by that. Can you spell it out? So let's have the proper understanding. What were your observations that day?
Okay, first, we did not condemn the election outcome, just to be clear. I condemn the actions of the politicians, and like I had made earlier comment, we saw the signs before election day, and we thought politicians are now becoming lazy and devising other means of wooing voters, and a mockery of the planning for elections. For me, for instance, since the 28th of October, there are other colleagues that were here since September, and then politicians cannot just come in the weekend of their buy voters and move on. And there is also a moral to all of this conversation that we also need to bring to fore. And I mean, the essence of democracy, the quality of those patients is based on inducements. Our point is, we were at 300 samples at the state, sample in the sense using statistical representative, and in the manner of our deployment, we saw a report from 14% of those samples about concerns of vote buying. We have other sister CSOs like that for democracy and development that also saw in terms of their own sample issues of vote buying. Our own also report indicate the vote buying ranges between 20,000 and 5,000, and in some instances, details of voters were collected, of course, for plans of what to do for them beyond the day of the election. So for us, we can all tactics of election rigging in our election. There are other ways of engaging and also getting legitimate outcome. Politicians should not resort to doing that. One of the things that we keep seeing also is the sort of political pressure that comes in the weekend of the election. For me, politicians that have no business in the state should not be in the state. We got every weekend. It has happened in Edo, and now we're also seeing it. We saw it also in Ondo, that the weekend of the election, you see more than 30 state governors of other states in the state claiming they are here to support their colleague. That, for me, brings a lot of the process, especially if you think about the older opposition that trying to election. So that's also needs to be condemned. I mean, most times we tend to begin to push if we can go back to the idea of just even having one election, all elections in one day. Maybe people focus on trying to win a state, putting pressure in other states. That for me is not acceptable.
All right, thank you so much. Let me cross to Femi Lawson. You were talking about, apathy, that is the political apathy that we've been witnessing. Less than 500 voters came out to vote on Saturday, 16th of November 2024. Of course, looking at that, they're giving the mandate to a man that will rule over 5 million people. Is it not a thing of concern? Was it what caused this? I must first ask that. Is it the presence of the security agent, or what exactly is the cause of this particular political?
The seeming apathy by voters in Ondo State if you look at it, didn't even start with this election. And I always want to push this blame on the political parties because they are not doing enough. And I think it's becoming a terrible Nigerian culture for our people to become complacent when there are elections. And look at in 2023, the presidential election. Look at the percentage of Nigerians that voted to elect the president that will govern over 200 million people. The same thing is repeating itself. And I was just having a discussion with somebody yesterday when I saw the total number of votes cast, in the recent presidential election in the United States. And you want to, just ask why, you have 150 million people, coming to decide the fate of a nation of just 200 and something million people. It tells you the level of awareness, vote education. But in our own case, we have left this thing in the hand of the media, the civil society, and the Electoral Commission. Whereas the first beneficiaries of the outcome of these elections, the political parties, are doing practically nothing. In actual fact, there are political parties that only exist every 4 years when there are elections. The moment there is no election, they do not exist anywhere other than on the ballot papers. So these are the issues. The people are not sensitized enough to the extent that they will understand that it is not just about unpicking somebody as your governor, as your president, or legislature, or as the case may be, but it's about determining your own future. People are not seeing themselves enough as stakeholders in this process. And I think the leadership question in Nigeria should also be attributed to this, because our people don't actually understand that they are the employers of these leaders who occupy positions. So we are supposed to be the biggest stakeholder in the whole democracy project, but they are sitting at the back seats now, behaving as subjects, where they are behaving as if some lords are the governor, the president, and legislators, as the case may be. Whereas the people are supposed to be in the front seat. They are supposed to be the determining factor, but now they are relegating themselves. And it's a very terrible dimension, because it will get to a time that only few people will sit and appoint, we call it election, people that will determine the destiny of over 200 million people. The political parties are deliberately not sensitizing the people, and it is to their advantage, because the more politically conscious the people are, the more the likelihood of electing credible and popular leaders, to govern the society.
So much, Femi.
All right, thank you so much, Femi Lawson. There, I'm tempted to ask. Probably, Paul should also react to that. I'd share the same sentiment with Femi Lawson. There, he said politicians and parties are not doing far. What's your own observation for this?
Did you get that, Paul? He's asking,
I think we have
what's your own
connection issues there.
Hello, Paul, can you hear him? He says, what's your reaction to what Mr. Lawson has said? I think Mr. Lawson's network is frozen there, but, well, let me come to you, Femi. You've said so much, about the political class and their willingness to make changes that will benefit the electorate. But it's clearly seen that right now some seem to have a level of weaponization of poverty. In the absence of the politicians doing what is right, which is long coming, it doesn't look like it's going to come. How do we turn things around? What's the responsibility of the electorate right now? Because it seems they have been left to themselves. And so they must find ways to redeem themselves. They must find ways to liberate themselves from the shackles in which they have been put. What's your suggestion?
Well, for me, I do hope that even the government will support the effort of the media and society in getting our citizens to be responsible and to be stakeholders within the project, because continues in this manner, believing that you are benefiting from the unconsciousness, of the citizens. A time will come that this, largely uneducated population will turn against you. By then, there will be no leadership, there will be no knowledge, there will be no reason for them to even violence. It's not an option. So it is even best that the government support the media and civil society in educating the citizens, in mobilizing them to be part of governance, in mobilizing them to be part of the electoral process. Because if you get to a point where there's a total loss of confidence in how leadership emerges in our society, then people will begin to encourage anarchy. People will begin to encourage, unconstitutional means to, they just get somebody who they want to like his face and maybe they like his idea, into power. So I think we have a role to play. The media has been doing its best. Civil societies have been working in this regard. But I think the government should understand that it is going to benefit if you have a population of citizens that are educated.
Paul, to make his summation of everything we've talked about. Paul, as we close now, we need to move beyond dealing with symptoms. What do you think is a silver bullet to resolving this anomaly?
Well, the biggest beneficiary of politicians, and I agree with Femi that we need to hold people to account. You heard some rhetoric from politicians, for instance, that we're going to template for the next election. It's not coming from the point that we have done well in this election and we are going to plan and do the next election, but rather from the point of mischief, from the point to encourage corruption. And I mean, we cannot continue to put burden on our institutions like we keep saying, the anti-graft agencies and all of that. On Saturday here, it took even the effort of the DSS to make arrests. And like I will keep saying, you also need other agencies to come on board. Like I will keep also encouraging that we cannot have these numbers of deployment in our elections without appropriate actions. Sanctions need to immediately, and I agree with, we will not also in the angle of providing the level of education for the city. I'm sure the more they also get to understand the right choices or the better choices in the engagement.
All right, that's where we will leave the discussion. Certainly, if anything is to change, there must be consequences. Coming from my guest, Mr. Femi Lawson, National Secretary for Campaign for Democracy, and Paul James, Election Observer for YAGA. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on this discussion. We take a break now, and we'll be back with news at the top of the hour.
Ellen 24/7 is first of all a news station.
Well, we'll continue with updates from the just concluded governorship
in the southeast has raised questions if INEC will be able to conduct elections.
With a core team of over 40 correspondents spread across Nigeria.
Nigeria is set to take its place.
And affiliates in Africa, Europe, America, and Asia. We give you news as it breaks from the perspective you can trust.
Ellen 24/7 News, where the story goes, we go.
What makes the political system what it is today? What are the recurring issues?
Order.
The tussle for power.
An extremely problematic area.
The tension. The instability of the system. Join Ellen 24/7 as we take you inside the local and international political arena in the world of politics.
Apologize for saying that I was corrupt.
I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
Watch politics now on Ellen 24/7.
Don't miss Politics Now on Ellen 24/7. Ellen 24/7 lights up your day with unbeatable shows that guarantees absolute access to stories that revolves around politics, entertainment, and sports. Breaking news, plus detailed reports and analysis. At Ellen 24/7, where the story goes, we go. At Ellen 24/7 Sports, football just got better. For the fans. For loyalty. For the tackles.
Near supernatural goal from Lionel Messi.
For the celebrations. For the goals. For the love of the game.
Stay up to date with Ellen 24/7. Ellen 24/7. With news, politics, business, sports, and more on Ellen 24/7. Where the story goes, we go.
Welcome back. And in the news, President Bola Tinubu has conferred the National Award of Grand Commander of the Order of the Niger, GCON, on Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi. President Tinubu announced the award during the Nigeria-India bilateral meeting at the State House, Abuja, on Sunday. He said that the award was bestowed on the Indian leader to signify the country's appreciation and commitment to the Nigerian-Indian partnership. In his words, "You stood side by side with Nigeria on many fronts for many decades. Yes, democracy is a court of essential yield. You've navigated through Indian sectors and also ensured joint collaboration to maintain and strengthen our relationship."
Well, in another news development, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has condemned the conduct of the Ondo State governorship elections on Saturday by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, calling it a sham. The opposition party, in a statement signed by its National Publicity Secretary, Debo Ologunagba, on Sunday, said it is reviewing the outcome of the poll. According to INEC's declaration, PDP's candidate Agbola Ajayi came a distant second with a total of 117,845 behind the winner, Governor Lucky Ayedatiwa of the All Progressives Congress, APC, who polled 366,781 votes. The opposition party, in its statement, described the election as the worst ever to be conducted by INEC.
Now, meanwhile, the Police Service Commission has expressed its satisfaction on the performance of the security personnel who policed the Ondo State governorship election that held November 16th in the state. The Commission staff monitors report showed that the security men, especially the police, arrived voting centers on time and were alive to their constitutional responsibilities of securing the election space. Commission monitors said the police officers were polite, civil, but firm in the conduct of their electoral duties. DIG Sylvester Abiodun Alabi, Deputy Inspector General of Police in charge of 4 CID and who presided over the security management of the election, ensured a seamless deployment of security personnel with commissioners of police manning all the local government areas. He was assisted by other senior police officers, including the AIG Zone 7, AIG Kenneth Igwe, the Ondo State Commissioner of Police, CP Abayomi Oladipo Peters, and Olatunji Disu, CP Federal Capital Territory. There were, however, reports of pockets of vote buying in some voting centers, which have become recurring decimal in elections in the country. PSC monitors report that the election security was generally credible and above average, and has received the commendation of the Civil Society Situation Room. Clean Foundation, member of the Situation Room, have also commended the Commission for its proactive oversight of police conduct during the elections.
And now away from the Ondo State elections, in a gripping climax to the Miss Universe 2024 contest, Nigeria's representative Chidinma Adesina emerged the first runner-up, making her the first Nigerian to finish that high in the competition. Denmark's Victoria Kjær Tøiling was crowned the winner of the 73rd Miss Universe pageant at Arena CDMX in Mexico City. Chidinma's journey to the Miss Universe competition was quite tumultuous before coming to Nigeria to take the Miss Universe Nigeria crown. She contested in South Africa, where she was forced to withdraw before the final following a nationality row. Born to a Nigerian father in South Africa, 23-year-old withdrew from the country's competition for the safety and well-being of my family and I, she said, after a backlash that exposed anti-foreigner sentiment in South Africa. Nigerian heritage attracted vicious xenophobic attacks and spicy when she was announced as a Miss South Africa finalist in July, while the government said it was investigating a claim that her mother may have stolen the identity of a South African woman. Despite not being in the country in 20 years, organizers of the Nigerian contest invited her to join their finals, saying it was a chance for her to represent your father's native land on an international stage.
Well, congratulations to her. Meanwhile, French government wants to block the free trade agreement. This is in business between the European Union and 5 South African countries. Meanwhile, farmers have called for nationwide protests starting Monday. Farmers demonstrated outside Paris to denounce the proposed free trade agreement with Mercosur countries ahead of nationwide demonstrations. This is a proposed free trade agreement between the EU and the countries in the Mercosur, Southern Common Market, the South American trade bloc, the full members of which are Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Bolivia. For several years now, this project has been a source of great concern among farmers, who have denounced the threat that the massive influx of South American foodstuffs could pose to the French market. The agreement includes cutting import tariffs on up to 45,000 tons of honey, 60,000 tons of rice, and even 180,000 tons of sugar.
Well, elsewhere in the world, human rights activists in Brazil have placed 733 empty plates on Copacabana Beach to represent the 733 million people suffering from hunger worldwide ahead of a G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro. The symbolic protest, organized by civil society groups, aimed to draw attention to global hunger and urge world leaders to take action. Inspired by Brazilian sociologist and activist Bethinho de Souza's words, hunger can't wait. The plates, each marked with a red cross, aimed to highlight the urgency of the crisis. Rio will host the G20 summit on November 18 to 19, where leaders from 19 major economies, EU and the African Union, will convene under the theme Construction of a Just World and a Sustainable Planet. Citizens joined the protest in the most lively spot in the city to extend their support to the movement.
A very creative way to protest, if you ask. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump making his first UFC appearance since winning the election November 5th over Vice President Kamala Harris, walked in with an entourage that included UFC President Dana White, Elon Musk Speaker Mike Johnson, Vivek Ramaswamy, Kid Rock, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard and sons Donald Jr. and Eric. As the crowd erupted, Trump made his way to the ringside announcer's table where he embraced podcast king and UFC commentator Joe Rogan.
It's always loud when he comes here, but now that he's won, now that he's the president again, oh my God.
Congratulations, sir. Madison Square Garden, as the president-elect Donald Trump feels the love from all of these New Yorkers and all the fight fans around the world who have made their way to UFC 309. Robert Kennedy alongside, taking a position.
Wow, quite interesting. Zoe, if you ask me, I love American politics. I mean, it's like show business.
Very, very interesting, and interesting entourage there.
Yeah, interesting entourage. Donald Trump finds himself in quite an interesting company. Well, we'll see how it pans out when he's on the saddle. Well, thank you for staying with us on news at this time. There are more updates coming. Log on to our website at www.ln247.news. We'll take a break, and when we come back, there's more on This Morning. Don't go away.
Stay up to date with LN 24/7. LN 24/7. With news, politics, business, sports, and more on LN 24/7. Where the story goes, we go.
LN 24/7 is first of all a news station.
Well, we'll continue with updates from the just concluded governorship
in the Southeast has raised questions if INEC will be able to conduct elections.
With a core team of over 40 correspondents spread across Nigeria.
Nigeria is set to take its place.
And affiliates in Africa, Europe, America, and Asia. We give you news as it breaks from the perspective you can trust.
LN 24/7 News. Where the story goes, we go.
great to have you back. Still watching this morning. And here we're not done with the talk and discussions. We're taking it to foreign affairs now. On this segment, the agenda, we look at speculations and prospects following the visit of India's Prime Minister to Nigeria. Yeah, and our talking points, leveraging on India-Nigeria relations. We're also looking at challenges of partnership. And yes, and that is key for development, for progress. Also a round off in ensuring that Nigeria remains a relevant partner. How do we keep ourselves relevant? That should be a very critical discussion. We'll be bringing in our guests. Have joining us Ben Adam Shemang, a public affairs analyst and former director, Voice of Nigeria, Dishwell, Africa. Thank you for joining us on the program, Mr. Shemang. It's great to have you. We'll also be bringing in Dayo Fagbelu, who will be joining us shortly to share his insights as well. So there's so much to unpack. Talking about the Indian Prime Minister's visit here. We can see Mr. Shemang there in the video. But before we bring him into discussion, Nigeria and India actually pledged stronger ties in maritime security and counterterrorism during a meeting on Sunday, the 17th November, where the two countries also agreed on more support for global South nations. In his first visit to Nigeria, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was hosted by President Bola Tinubu in the nation's capital, Abuja, where they spoke of a new chapter in their strategic partnership in areas of defense, energy, technology, trade, and development. Here's more in this report.
Modi has often touted India as a voice of Global South, the group of countries primarily considered developing nations, including Nigeria, but which also includes China and several wealthy Persian Gulf states. There is no doubt that the visit of the leader of the world's largest democracy has impacted on the mood of the country, and if this will be a Tinubu masterstroke is yet to be seen. India and Nigeria have many things in common, but she has overtaken Nigeria in development of her human resources and has taken the world by storm in the last 3 decades. Nigeria, on the other hand, is on the reverse gear. Nigeria is India's second largest trading partner in Africa, with bilateral trade reaching about $15 billion, with a significant part from Nigeria's oil export. India is said to have about 200 companies operating in Nigeria, with these companies said to have invested at least $27 billion, boasting of being Nigeria's second largest employer of labor. Beyond the economy, India has also played a significant role in areas of defense. It has helped Nigeria with its war college. Both countries also hold a strategic and counterterrorism dialogue to identify areas of cooperation to fight terrorism. Prime Minister Modi comes at a point when his Nigerian counterpart grapples with an ailing economy and faces harsh criticism at home for his economic policies that have created a cost of living crisis for Nigerians. At such a time like this, can the visit of the Indian Prime Minister and the deals that have been struck be the answer to the President Tinubu's attempts at revamping the economy and turning around the country's fortunes?
Okay, does this visit hold the key to turning around the country's economic challenges? Well, we certainly will have to wait and see. Well, I'd like to bring in my guest right now, Mr. Ben Adam Shemang, to join us. Welcome to the program. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Mr. Shemang, talk to us on hearing the visit of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, first to come to Nigeria in about 17 years. Does it spark some hope that President Tinubu has something in the offing that might turn around the country?
Because the sound is freezing. But by way of comparison, I would want to say that India is the largest population in Asia. Nigeria is the largest population in Africa. Nigeria is the largest democracy in Africa. India is the largest democracy in Asia. But what is Nigeria learning from India? India can take about a month conducting elections, and you don't hear of any ballot boxes snatching or mutilation or frauds here and there when it comes to election. We want to conduct elections in just one day, and one day we cannot manage it. So what is it by way of peer review mechanism? Can we peer review what Nigeria is doing in terms of democracy, in particular in terms of election, and see that they go through this and come out so clean? They do elections region by region, and it comes out very clean. But in our own case, we do all sorts of deployments. Look at what happened on Saturday in Ondo State. You have the military, you have a comprising Navy, Army, Navy, Air Force, the police, the state security services, and many other paramilitary organizations. You know, we treat election in Nigeria as if there is one big crisis when it's not supposed to be so. Then, having said so, you look at the way India is moving in terms of science and technology. They have gone into space, doing very well there, bearing in mind that they want to also show Pakistan, their neighbor, that they are above Pakistan. Pakistan is also struggling. In other words, they are doing a kind of a competition. But in our own world in Nigeria, where are our people will look at in Africa and say, okay, let's compete, or let's show them we are ahead, you know. We are told that close to 1 million Indians are in Nigeria. That's a very good population for the diaspora. And no wonder in terms of trading, in terms of employment, they employ quite a lot of Nigerians. And if you look at the balance of trade, is skewed in such a way that it favors India more than Nigeria. In other words, we import more from India than we export to India. We consume so much the Indian product more than India consumes ours. It's baffling that some 5 years ago, if government had not stopped it, that India started exporting jollof rice into Nigeria, already cooked, prepared. All you need to do is to tear the package and start at the pack and start eating, you know. And it sounded very funny that we could go that low doing that in Nigeria. Then in the ICT world, I tell you, India is doing so much a good thing that Nigeria can learn from. And those days, remember, in terms of population explosion, virtually every secondary school that was worth its salt those days had some Indian teachers. But when the chips were down, Indians decided to just return home. Let's take the destiny of India into our hands. And having done so, they were able to map out strategies scientifically, educationally, in terms of infrastructure and agriculture. They then came back to the world to now say this is what we have. Now we are seeing Nigerians, virtually every country of this world, you have Nigerians, so resilient kind of creative people, and they all are over the place. A time too that will come that Nigerians will come back to Nigeria and say, time has come that we've lived in, quote and unquote, in an exile. Come home to see where we can make Nigeria be in terms of being a global power, of which, yes, we ought to be. So if you compare the countries and militaries, look, when you had the defense industry, DICON in Kaduna, people were thinking that by now we should be having our AK-47, we should be having all sorts of rifles that we can afford. Now, you look at the Tata, that big armored carrier from India, Nigerian military, they buy it for personnel, armored personnel carriers, which also tells you that India is actually moving, and we are. I heard your reporter saying that, well, India is moving forward, Nigeria is putting a reverse gear. Well, I hope that by now our hand is on the level to move forward positively.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shamang, giving us a recap, actually, similarities between India and those things that, coming from both nations having so much in common, especially in terms of population. Nigeria's most populous nation in Africa, with India, the largest democracy, in the world, second largest population in the world. And political scientists do hold that no nation can be great without its population. Now, I go to my guest here in the studio. Dio, great to have you on the show. Great to have you join us on this morning. We're reflecting on the Prime Minister of India's visit, Narendra Modi. Right. Quite significant for many. After 17 years, first Prime Minister to visit Nigeria. Right. And so it holds for many a promise, a hope. Definitely, it has impacted on the atmosphere. Is there, a Tinubu master stroke in the offing? What is there for Nigeria, what is the significance of this visit for you, if any?
I think for starters, of course, my own area of interest is the transfer of knowledge and possibly technologies. One of the great things about India that is of note is their capacity to localize technologies, finding localized or internalized solutions to their own problems.
Just like China, right?
Yes. And even though it's a bit crude, they haven't progressed to heavy industrialization, they have solutions in every corner. I've been to Chennai before, the industrial city of India, and in its crude state, the output in terms of components were very impressive. So what we said, from a crude state of engineering, they were producing world-class standards. Now that is the part that I am interested in.
So you're saying India can help us in industrialization?
Precisely. It's not about trade. It's not about buying and selling. The Nigerians always look for the easy way out. We're always buying and selling crap. No disrespect. That's not what we should be looking at. We should be looking at a relationship in which we transfer technologies, we learn from them, right? How to simplify these engineering processes, how to utilize them locally in such a way that they're cost effective and they can compete internationally. These are the things we should be looking at.
It's interesting.
Not buying and selling with India.
It's interesting you mentioned, manufacturing, because I do recall way back, almost a decade, more than a decade ago, when the Skoda came on board. Skoda, and in its crude state, it was still exported to Nigeria.
Right.
And we managed it. The gear was so crude and very difficult to maneuver, and we laughed at the technology of India trying to produce a car. But
Skoda is not India.
Okay, it's not
Tata.
Tata is
yes,
India. Tata. So
right.
I mean, decades on.
Yes.
Look at the automobile industry of India, where it is today.
Precisely. That is what we need to do. Those are the examples we need to emulate. Now, another thing India has done, which is very impressive, was they set standards for education. The standards of education in India are so high. I mean, nearly every family is a mathematical guru of one sort or the other because they've ingrained it as a culture. Now, these are some of the things we need to do also. They have schools that have turned out some of the best leaders in the world.
And software development.
Precisely. That is what we need to emulate. Not buying and selling, like, trade what? We don't need to buy anything from them. We need to build a relationship in which knowledge is transferred and knowledge is utilized effectively.
Interesting perspective Dio brings to bear. Knowledge transfer should be a priority for the Nigerian administration in this partnership. Let me go to my colleague Ayobami in Abuja. I'm sure Ayo has some interesting perspectives to bring to this discussion. Are you lost in thought? Come on, are you with us? Okay, Ayabamis, okay, let's talk more, let's dwell more. Let me go to Mr. Shemang. You know, we talked, my guest in the studio here has talked about knowledge transfer. What are your thoughts about knowledge transfer and the possible deals that will be struck? And there's no gainsaying that politicians can, you know, be selfish in their partnerships, you know, not looking at the wider, you know, gain, you know, for the nation as a whole. What do you think Nigeria should be, you know, discussing with their Nigerian counterparts?
Yeah, you see, when you're talking about knowledge transfer, I tell you, it's not going to be like just picking an original copy of a document and going to a photocopying machine, you photocopy and now say you have one that looks like the other. Knowledge transfer has to be a deliberate policy. And Indian is doing a very deliberate policy when it comes to setting up education standards. What are you doing when it comes to the curriculum, teacher content, the content of the curriculum itself? If every time we are still defining, you define and define, mechanics do not have any definition of anything. You know. If you don't know, you don't know. So that is the story of India. So how do we set up standards? What are our universities looking like? When we have polytechnics that are always on strike, what does it say when it comes to standards or knowledge transfer? So by knowledge transfer, yes, we will need to have some universities who, which can have campuses either in India or India also coming to have some campuses in Nigeria, so that in terms of huge transfer of money, we carry money, go to all these schools. Why don't the schools come to us here? So that instead of going to England, instead of going or going to China, America, Canada, why don't we begin to woo these people? Come and invest educationally in this country. Bring your kind of curriculum, and I'm telling you, the money students will spend in just for accommodation alone in some of these foreign countries, that is enough for them to go to school run by Indians in Nigeria, run by Chinese in Nigeria, so that this transfer of technology is actually a reality. But a situation where constantly we have NASU.
Okay, I think we had a little glitch there. We'll see how we can get Mr. Shemang back. But Dio, let's go into this issue that has been a source of huge concern for a lot of analysts, and some diplomats, Nigerian diplomats, have spoken with the issue of Nigeria being inept in signing pacts, you know, and actually ending up with the shorter end of the stick. How concerned are you about that? Is that an issue, especially when we're in bilateral relations?
Yeah, we've had a prolonged problem. I'm looking for the most polite way to present my position. You see, when we're not represented by the best of us, what happens is the worst of us will present their own standards to the world. And that's what you see in a lot of these agreements that you see. They are representations of the worst of us. Now, imagine if I was the one signing a pact, for instance. One of the things I'm concerned, I don't want to buy and sell. It's no good to me, it's ruining my economy. What I want us to focus on knowledge. Now, the question is, those that represent us at the higher echelons now, those that will set foreign policy and sign these agreements, what is their position? Are they professionals? Are they enlightened? Do they understand what exactly Nigeria needs to evolve or develop? These are the questions we have. If it's the political class, we know what the political class has shown a consistent approach to solving problems. They're either buying, they're acquiring, they're taking, but they never take it from the point of transferring knowledge and building up localized information. They never do that. I'm actually surprised that the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has now turned to India for a relationship. I'm surprised, because you don't expect it from people like this. He's probably going to America to buy a train, or going to France to buy a plane. I mean, he's never thinking of building from the ground up. And that is what India is known for, building from the ground up.
I mean, Nigeria's had a long relationship with India. Do remember a steel company, I think Ajaokuta Steel was set up by Indians and Russians. I mean, they had a role to play in that. So why are you surprised at him turning to India?
He's not just that kind of person. He hasn't given you the impression that he's that kind of person. He's always buying. He's more of a, like I call him, he's more of a transactional human being in terms of just acquiring and purchasing. But you see, when you deal with India on a normal basis, their expectations, you want to build from the ground up when it comes to India.
So your concern right now in these relations are that we might not have our best minds, square pegs in square holes.
Oh yes, definitely.
To actually be able to maximum utility of this, of these opportunities that are made available to us.
We've had this conversation before, and one of the things that I got from the conversation we had with this professor from Foreign Affairs was that our foreign policy is flawed. We don't really have one.
All right. I'll leave it there. Let me go to, I don't know if Shamang is back. I'd like to hear from his perspective. Okay, he's not back. So the foreign policy is critical. We need to have a blueprint for how we engage.
Yes, that says we don't want to buy and sell from you. That is not our interest. Our interest is the transfer of knowledge. That's what we need. We can't keep, look, one of the reasons why the demand of Forex is high.
So, in essence, we choose our allies, they don't choose us. Based on that.
I think that's the way it should be.
Because when they choose you, it's based on their terms.
Their own interest, yes. We need to pick the people we want to run with. For instance, there's very little you gain from America. Very little. I mean, they might impact the world, but they impact you negatively. So look, let's just leave them in their spot. We appreciate them.
So a relationship in that area is overrated now.
It's ridiculous. But with India, you understand certain things. They want to push the knowledge they have. They want to push it out. And you can see it from, the leadership in the IT sector internationally. These are areas that we can significantly benefit from. Process, knowledge, the ontological aspect of it, the epistemological aspect of it, they are well grounded. And that is what we need to build. We don't want to be buying and selling. We're not a trader nation.
I don't want to be asking the same question another way, but clearly from what you're saying, if we're to remain relevant to countries like India,
yes,
we must go beyond trade, buying and selling, as you say. We must have something that India needs.
Yes.
For us to maintain a respectable relationship.
Look.
Not a cup in hand relationship. How do we build that? How we build our reputation? India needs us, and we need India.
India has a large population, and one of the biggest sources of revenue for India is diaspora remittance. And when I mean diaspora remittance, I mean Indians all over the world, inclusive of Nigeria. So it's a business for them. These are some of the things we need to think about. We have an area of strength. We have gas, we have oil. There's so many areas in which Indians will benefit. You see, it's not just about India, but Indians themselves, because a lot of them remit their resources to India. So for as long as they are thriving in different parts of the world, that part of the world in which they are thriving has a strength to bargain with them.
200 companies in Nigeria alone, Indian companies in Nigeria, and really thriving. Indians are second largest employer of labor in Nigeria, according to reports. That's a huge statement being made.
Right.
Well, let me go to Shamang. He's back. Great to have you back. And we're talking about this relationship, Shamang, how it can benefit Nigeria, because India is growing and continues to assert itself on the global stage. How do we ensure that we don't end up in obscurity at detriment of India's growth? Especially in...
Yeah, you see...
Please go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, you see, this thing we call oil finding. We've found oil, we've found oil. It has virtually crippled quite a lot of initiative in Nigeria. It ought to be a kind of an advantage, but people would just simply come to Abuja, begin to talk of federal allocation, state government take this, federal takes this, local governments take this. So that kind of cripples Nigeria to development. But all the same, the Nigerians will have to also look inwards. Looking inwards implies we have to look for our own homegrown solution. I remember the days of Maurice Uwu as INEC chairman. Some Indians came demonstrating how voting could be done at the center. It is counted or collected at the center. So why didn't we imbibe that? And if we are talking of imbibing or probably we rejected it, it meant where is the substitute? It's just not about importing from India. Any house that simply believes the uncle will be supplying with food, therefore will have to depend on that uncle. The day he has a problem with the uncle, that is independent, is gone. So
oh yeah, that's enough.
Nigeria
Okay.
must
Okay, we seem to have a glitch there. I'll go to Ayobami. Ayob, it's your cue.
To our guest in the studio there, I must say thank you so much for your input, your great analysis right there. But let's look at let's talk about these full robust relationships. Visit or Prime Minister Modi is also in Brazil to attend the G20 summit. So it's going to be a conversation that will continue that angle. You were talking about trying to learn a lot from India, not to just trade them.
Well, I must apologize to our viewers. At this rate, the glitches are becoming very, very unbearable, especially when we're trying to, make a summation. Well, we'll see how we can get that going. But let's look at, some issues, concerns that have been raised by Nigerians who all live in India. There have been issues of attacks on Nigerians. And recently, Apex Igbo Social Cultural Organization made a statement signed by its Secretary General, Mazi Okechukwu Iziguzoro, who emphasized that the alarming statistics that over 1.3 million Nigerians are currently imprisoned across various states in India, and urged President Tinubu not to overlook that challenging situation. We've seen attacks on Nigerian students in India. How are we to, and Indians enjoy a very hospitable environment here in Nigeria. Almost all nationals enjoy a hospitable environment. Do we need to strengthen our, consulates, abroad? How do we resolve this? And should President Tinubu be presenting this as well?
I'll tell you what, because like I said to you, I made trips to India, and I had to interact with Nigerians in India, apart from the Indians I had to interact with. And it was an interesting revelation for me.
Do you see a level playing field?
For starters, I think Nigerians were quite intimidating. We must be clear about it. We're quite an intimidating people. We're forceful. I mean, one of the things, as soon as I landed in India, one of the first things they said to me was, there is an approach to a conversation in India. If you exert yourself from the beginning, you are in control. If you fail to exert yourself from the beginning, you will remain subservient on a continuous basis. And it was an enlightening position for me. But one of the problems we have is when you consistently exert yourself, there's always a pushback, there's always resistance. I keep saying this all the time. You can't get away scot-free with it. Now, yes, the question is, why are they in jails? They have very strict laws. They're very difficult laws. And I'll give you an example, for instance. On the average Indian buys an made in Indian car. Okay. They can't import cars. If you import a car, the cost of importing a car is so astronomical, it'll probably break your back. Now, these are some of the things we talk about. The issue with us, in my opinion, is that we have a tendency to want to break the rules on a consistent basis. So there's two sides to this negotiation. One of them is, please stop incarcerating my people. Stop focusing on them because they're naturally, an aggressive people. And when I mean aggressive, I don't mean it in the negative sense. Push to get results. A survival instinct, another way to put it. But having said that, they need to speak to Nigerians also, that they need to stay within the confines of the law.
Okay.
Yes. You must understand also in terms of religion, Hindus, Islam. I mean, India is a place where these things are taken seriously. So when an average Nigerian who is pushy wants to cross boundaries, for instance, he wants to marry maybe a particular caste or group of people that they're not allowed to marry into, they must expect that there will be pushback. And what I'm saying is that, yes, one of the things we need to look at in policy is fair treatment of Nigerian citizens.
Fair treatment in comparison to how Indians are being treated
fair
in
treatment.
Nigeria.
No, Indians are giving an extensive rope in India. In Nigeria, they just do whatever they like. There's a difference.
There's a difference,
yes.
Right?
Indians are just giving leeway. I'm telling you this as a fact. They're just giving an extensive leeway. I worked extensively with them. There's some fantastic Indians.
Because I've spoken to some small business owners who think that the Indian community have somewhat of an edge over them when it comes to the labor market in some sectors.
I don't think so. It's just you see, look, one of the problems we have, and this is what this president doesn't understand, is the small industries cannot even afford to buy equipment. The difference is, they can just trot into India, bring localized technology, which gives them an edge. Machines are relatively crude, you see them. But they know how to acquire them. We don't have these resources and we don't build anything internally.
Why do you think we haven't, leveraged on India's experience in agriculture as well? These are areas in which they have made extensive
I can answer you very easily because of leaders like Tinubu. You see, I keep saying this all the time. If you don't know how to work, you cannot teach people how to work. Neither can you set policy. You see, they're two distinct areas. The theoretical aspect of learning and the practical aspect of learning. Unfortunately, you need the two of them. Because when you have a theory, you have to test the theory, which is the practice. We have to consistently practice. When it's easier to make money from politics by going to the Senate and becoming a billionaire than it is to work.
Dayo, that's you taking a swipe now at the president. But let me go to Ayobami. Ayobami, let's try your network again. I know it was quite, epileptic, but share your thoughts.
Well, I hope this will work. Since we're talking about Indians, and of course they are very massive in IT, maybe they should just do their abracadabra to help us have a conversation. Anyway, Mr. Dayo, good That'd be good to see. And thank you for all those beautiful, insights that you've been given. I just want us to talk about, some other critical parts that India is also very huge in. I'm talking about the agricultural. India in the past used to be a country that depends solely on, importing grains. Now they are a contributor when it talks about massive exportation in terms of food. What lessons can Nigeria learn? And also, renewable energy is also one of those critical things that this government is talking about. Do you think we can learn anything from India when it comes to renewable energy and agriculture, both sectors?
I think there are two sides to the conversation. And like I said to you, we can learn everything and anything from them. You see, the path they have taken is a path in which the knowledge process has been localized. They have converted what is represented as an international knowledge structure into a localized knowledge structure. They are one of the most successful at it. I think we can learn anything and everything from them. Look, basically, the bottom line is we should have a policy that speaks to the fact that we will stop trading and start making. Obi says it's production. Okay, Obi is a trader. I don't know how he wants to produce anything, but look, the point is Nigeria needs to focus solely on how to make things, not how to buy and sell things. The economy can no longer sustain trade as a whole. We have to have substitutions, localized substitutions, that will keep our revenue internalized and being exchanged amongst us consistently. We can start off with Africa, for instance, then we can move to Nigeria. But the idea is that we need to keep exchanging money consistently amongst ourselves without requiring a demand for the dollar. That's what the point is. So India has done this successfully. Secondly, the diaspora remittance, the remittance of knowledge into the Indian system from the diaspora is a great element. These are things we can learn from India, how to take knowledge from the external, transfer it to our schools, our institutions. And look, all these things impact agriculture, they impact manufacturing, the whole process you're talking about, food processing, food preservation, it impacts it as a whole. You see, at the bottom of everything we're talking about, like I said, is knowledge. When you know how, you can do it. The problem with us as Nigerians is we don't know how and we're lazy. We are led by people that do not know how also and find it, very difficult to engage in the process of learning in the practical sense. It's a big issue with Nigeria. Look, in my industry, I'll give you a simple example. In a class of maybe 100 students, how many of them are manufacturing or producing anything? By the time you count us, maybe like 5 or 6 of us. Everybody else is a trader or some other profession. Now, the bottom line really is India has set a proper example of how to evolve as a nation. And they have the core element is knowledge.
Knowledge is
it impacts everything.
We are in dispensation of knowledge right now. I think this is
the knowledge era.
The knowledge era, and so
and the knowledge economy.
Knowledge economy, and so we must be able to harness that. And as the government signs these pacts and these agreements, and just like Daya said, we must refocus. We must have a foreign policy document that emphasizes on. Is it production or production?
I think
on industry.
I think it's just face knowledge.
On knowledge. Okay.
Knowledge will impact everything. It will impact the IT sector, mathematics, physics, engineering.
Every sector.
Yes.
Every sector. Well, that's where we will leave the discussion. I want to thank my guest. I want to thank Shamang for joining us. Okay. His name is Ben Adam Shamang, a public affairs analyst. It's been great having you. So, though you couldn't stay throughout the program because of the network, Also want to thank Dio Fagbulu here with me. Dio, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Great having you. And yeah, Ayobami, this is where we have to draw the curtain. Really, I hope you enjoyed the program as much as I have today.
Yeah, and Nigeria will continue their conversation at G20 in Brazil. Maybe something great might also come out from that. Thank you.
Certainly, Ayo, we hope something great will come out. Is this part of the, is this going to be the Tinubu masterstroke? We'll just have to wait and see. I'm sure Dio doesn't share that optimism, but we must continue to remain positive. Well, viewers, thank you for staying with us on this morning. It's been a fantastic expedition for me, and we look forward to seeing tomorrow bright and early. It's bye from me. My name is Henry Williams. And on behalf of Ayobami, my colleague in Abuja, thanks for staying with us. We'll see you same time, bright and early tomorrow.